What up, squad? Welcome back to the FitBiz Podcast. Jordan here with an exciting episode where we're going to talk about procrastination. And I'm just going to dive right in. So the reason I'm talking about this is this morning, I sat down to do what I call construction work, which I'll explain what that means in just a second. But my tasks under my construction work window were as follows. I needed to create a few podcast outlines. I was going to spend 1.5 hours working on a new VSL, video sales letter project, marketing asset for those who might not be familiar, disregard. And I was going to spend 1 hour working on a new kind of cash generating campaign for our IFCA clients, which is a free challenge framework that we've been working on now for a few months. So all, deep work projects that are really important to move the business forward. And here's what I did instead. I fucked around with my podcast studio, like playing with my equipment and trying to get this stuff finished. I spent 15 minutes trying to fit my screen perfectly on this external screen that I have hanging on the wall. Then I responded to Facebook questions and Slack messages. And then I went in more Slack stuff and responded to things. And then I started to write an Instagram caption. So I lost about 2 hours this morning doing things that were not on my most important projects list or my MIT's most important tasks. And that's what prompted me to want to talk about this. It's something that I've battled with my entire adult life, is procrastination. And maybe that's something that as you're listening, you're like, yeah, me too. In high school, I was like notorious for working on my homework, like in the parking lot of school when it was due, in 30 minutes. I'm like, I'm cranking it out. It's morning. I've got my interior dome light on, trying to finish this shit. Or in college, I would pull all-nighters, cramming for a test because I didn't really pay much attention during the actual semester. And so that has bled into my professional career. So if you've had those kind of habits early in life, trust me, it's going to be hard breaking it, but it is possible to break it. So today I'm going to talk about where procrastination comes from. And to me, it comes from 3 areas. I'll break those down. And then I'm going to explain why done is better than perfect and what that actually means. And then how to end procrastination in just 3 easy steps. All right, so let's jump in. So procrastination, in my opinion, from what I've seen, and I've done a lot of research, I've read some books on this subject, it comes from 3 areas. Number 1, lack of concentration, just the ability to concentrate. Number 2, it's either too much fear or not enough fear. And I'll explain what that means. And then 3, not having enough excitement around what you're doing and not looking at it as fun, okay? So let's break down concentration first. So you procrastinate because you can't concentrate, frankly. I think that's the number 1 reason. Well, why is that? So think about it like this. Don't pretend, this is just the reality. Concentration comes from consciousness, right? If you're not a conscious being, then you don't have the ability to concentrate on anything because you're not conscious. So consciousness is the most important and the most attributable trait of us as human beings. We're sentient, we're self-conscious, we can focus on things, and we can analyze and think and reflect. And it's pretty cool, right? How awesome is that? That we have conscious ability. Now, think about it. You're consciously listening to me talk right now. Or maybe you're watching this on YouTube and you're watching me on video. You're consciously watching me with your eyes. Or if you and I were in front of each other in person, you'd be able to reach out and touch me, or maybe even smell me if I farted or something, right? And think about it like this. If consciousness were this bright, shining light in a dark forest, you'd be able to see part of that dark forest that the light is now hitting on. And the closer an object in the forest is to that light, the more visible it will be, right? Now, let's say you take reflectors and you put it around that light, so it makes it a searchlight. A searchlight is like one straight, solid beam. And then it would have this real strong beam shining in one direction. But let's say that your glass on the light is dirty, okay? Or maybe there's like a crack in it, or you just have mud on the light. Therefore, it's affecting its ability to shine brightly, right? This is going to greatly impact its ability or your ability to see or to shine light on a subject. See, the dirt is like your distractedness, okay? Different parts of our brains become dirty caused by just poor habits that affect concentration. All right, things like task hopping, like scrolling, like dopamine seeking. A lot of times we become very addicted to these short-term dopamine payoffs, and that's also just why scrolling is so bad. I'll touch on that for a second. Like, here's why scrolling is affecting your concentration and therefore causing you to procrastinate. Because when you scroll, what happens is your brain, it creates an open dopamine loop, meaning the brain is wired to seek dopamine as a form of achievement, progress, staying alive, right? Eating, sex, propagating the species. But the dopamine system needs to have some kind of a closed loop or payoff when it finishes or when it finds resolution. Well, in social media, you open it up and you look at a post and you scroll different posts, and it creates these open loops where it never gets that payoff. That's why it's so easy to get caught in a scrolling loop, and then it's like 15 minutes go by, 20 minutes, and then finally it takes some interruption to break this pattern where you step away and you're like, oh shit, I was just like lost in this vortex for 20 minutes. That's why it's so addicting. It creates these open dopamine loops. But you can fix it. You can change it. And if your brain is like wired to seek these open dopamine loops, you're going to have a hard time concentrating. You're going to be more prone to procrastination, right? So I'll talk about how to fix these things at the end, but that is a huge culprit of it. And it's something that, I speak on this as if I'm perfect, right? But I get caught in it too. Okay. I struggle with it too. A lot of us who listen to this show probably use social media to produce and to, market your business. So we have to be on there. It's just important to try to be on there producing, not consuming. Produce, not consume. All right. So the next place procrastination comes from, to me, has to do with fear. Okay. So there's this phrase from a book called The War of Art, and it says, procrastination is the most common manifestation of resistance because it's the easiest to rationalize. We don't tell ourselves, hey, I'm never going to write the symphony. Instead, we say, I'm going to write the symphony, I'm going to do it, I'm just going to start tomorrow, right? And it gives us this sense of like, well, I'm still going to do it, just not today, right? I have other things I have to do. And so the worst part about this is it can become, and it often does become, a habit. Okay, so that's why it's so difficult to focus on mundane tasks. Instead, we occupy ourselves with things like scrolling instead of creating. So why is it that we resist it so much? Well, for a lot of us, we fear failure and we fear producing something that's unworthy. We fear that we're going to work on this thing and it's not going to work. That's often the case in the beginning, okay? But failure and getting used to that's kind of like exercise. We create an opportunity to learn if we fail. If we create something that's unworthy and that doesn't work, we've just exercised, no different than if we go out and try to deadlift 405, but we drop the bar and we lower it to, 325 or 350 and we do pull it. Okay, cool. We're creating adaptive response and adaptive stressors, so we'll eventually be able to lift more weight, right? But if you've never lifted weights before and you go out and you pull one time and you fail at it, we're not going to just give up weightlifting, right? We failed at it, but the difference is nobody's around watching you fail. Whereas often with work of art or, business ventures or whatever else, you're just worried about the people judging you, okay? So here's the thing though. I think that fear in the very beginning, let's say that you're listening to this and you haven't started your business. Maybe you're like I used to be and you have all this content that you've created, but you still haven't hit publish. Or you have an idea of wanting to do something, you just haven't done it. I think a big thing is like you don't have enough fear. Okay, you probably have some kind of a safety net, some kind of a golden parachute. Maybe you have a cushiony job, or you have, parents who are supporting you, or you're just not scared of the consequences of not doing this thing yet. Okay, you're like, well, I'm only 25, right? I've got time. Or I'm only 30, I'm only 35, I've got time. Sometimes we need to have more fear creep into our conscious that almost creates a panic, because people change when the pain of change. People change when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of change, because changing your habits, changing your path, or changing a career, whatever it might be, is going to be painful. But the thing is, you're not going to do it until you sit down and you think about how painful it's going to be in the same position another year, 2 years, 3 years, 4, 5. All right. You have to really get some fear in your ass. And then eventually you'll have the internal drive and the intrinsic motivation to be like, I have no other choice but to produce. All right. So now, after you get through that early phase and you actually start the thing or you do it, at that point, fear kind of fucks with you, right? At the phase that I'm in, it fucks with my ability to produce, because if I produce out of fear, I'm erratic. Okay, I'm erratic. I jump around a lot. I don't produce very good work. So because often if I'm in my fear, I'm in my ego. Okay, so when my ego is involved, it perceives whatever I'm doing as like a life or death situation. Where instead, if you're established, you need to find a way to allow like spontaneity and fun and flow to emulate, or not emulate, but to be a part of your process. So if you can just be in a flow state, be in a state of fun and gratitude, and thinking every day about how lucky we are to be able to do the things that we do, you're going to produce much better work, and you're going to have a lower propensity to procrastinate because you're excited about doing the thing. Okay? So that's kind of how to think about where it comes from, right? But how do we fix it? I'm just going to share a couple of quick tips that have really worked well for me. So number one, exercising your ability to focus. All right. First, stop multitasking. Even in little things that you do. If you're in a conversation with a friend, be in that conversation. Even if you're talking to somebody who's boring as fuck, it's like staring at a wall or watching paint dry, ask questions, listen to them, be present. Don't pull out your phone. Don't think about what you got to do tomorrow. You know, just be there in the conversation. Or if let's say you're watching a movie, and I struggle with this sometimes. Sometimes, like often in our society today, our concentration sucks so bad that we can't even sit down and watch a TV show or a movie. We're on our phone at the same time. Dopamine seeking on the phone while we have a movie on. Maybe we also have a friend there we're talking to. Maybe the radio's playing in the background, right? It's ridiculous. That is crushing your ability to concentrate. So if you're going to watch a movie, watch the movie. Even during the boring parts, be focused on the movie because that's allowing you to concentrate on one thing, okay? Reading more. Even if it's 5 to 10 pages a day or at night, that's going to build that muscle of concentration. The other thing that I've found to be really helpful is meditation. It doesn't happen overnight, but if you can create a consistent, just 10 minutes a day, that's all you need, 10 minutes. And one thing that works really well is focus meditation. So what that means is you create a low stimulus environment. You sit, doesn't matter, as long as you're comfortable, back straight, in a focused state, right? Think of your head on a string, straight up, straight back, good posture. You're not like laying down about to fall asleep, right? And you put a candle in front of you and you stare at that candle, okay, at the flame, and focus on that candle while, doing your breathing, while trying to observe thoughts, but not live in the thoughts, all right? That's the key. And lastly, just sit and do nothing sometimes. Sit outside and just do nothing, right? Be in stillness. Stop having this tendency to always need stimulation coming in because that's only going to affect your ability to concentrate, all right? And here's a quick tip. So quick tip for if you want to break a habit. So here's a system that I've used that's really cool. So if you want to break a habit, this process is called temptation bundling. So what you do is you pair an action that you want to do with an action that you need to do. So if you allow yourself to, let's say, watch that Netflix series, right? I'm watching You right now. I've got one more episode left. It's a fucking really good show. It was kind of sucked at the beginning. This season, I was a little disappointed. It's getting a little too fantastical. And then now we're back on track where he's got a chick locked in a cage and he's trying to figure out if he's going to kill her. That's the type of You that I like, but I digress. Allow yourself to watch that show, or maybe you do scroll social media. You can still do those things, but only after you've done X, the thing that you need to do, right? Maybe it's something in your business or reading the book. Do the hard thing first and then use that as a reward afterwards. Or maybe it's like you set time aside to work on a project that you've been putting off because on the other side of that project, you're going to go have sex with your girlfriend or your husband or your wife, whatever, right? Like pair something that's really stimulating and that you seek as a reward or distraction at the other end of the thing that's hard for you to do. Or one of my current methods that, well, I've kind of gotten away with, but I've got a nicotine thing and I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm working on it. I'm trying to fix it. But I'll usually pair the nicotine reward after the project that I know I need to do, right? So it's like after I spend 1 solid hour in the morning working on my deep work projects, then I'll put in a snooze or a dip or whatever, right? Not suggesting that you do that, but that's just something that I've done. Now, next, time blocking. Super important. Give yourself a finish line because as I think it was Abe Lincoln said this, he's like, if you give me 8 hours to cut down a tree, I'll spend 7 hours sharpening the axe, right? So if you can just create a system where you have a shot clock. Okay, so I used to put timers on my screen that if I'm working on something for an hour, I'll have that timer counting down because it'll create urgency and you know that you only have that time frame to work on that project, all right? Lastly, final thing, and I would say the most important thing is create accountability. So the best way to do this is through investing in yourself. So we just invested in another mentorship personally that was like 35 grand for 6 months. And I already have an innate sense of urgency to do the things I've been putting off because I have a success coach, I have accountability, and I have skin in the game financially. And this isn't just anecdotal, all right? There's actual research on this, and those who listen to this show have probably heard me share this, but they did this study in the American Society of Training and Development, ASTD, and the study was trying to figure out how accountability affects people trying to reach a goal. And here's what they found. So your probability of achieving a goal, if you have an idea, and let's just use like weight loss as an analogy. You have the idea of wanting to lose weight. Just that idea alone gives you about a 10% chance of actually doing it. Now, let's say you consciously decide or declare that you'll do it, right? Maybe that's like telling some friends or putting it out on social media. You now bump that up to 25%. Now, let's say you decide when you'll do it. You give yourself a finish line. You can bump that up to 40%. Now, let's say you plan how you do it, right? You actually sit down and map out the steps that you need to take. You have about a 50% chance now. Now, let's say you commit to somebody who you will hold you accountable. You like, hey, I'm going to commit to my friend, my wife, my spouse. You have a 65% chance. All right, now here's the kicker. If you commit financially that you'll do it, and you have a specific accountability appointment with a person or coach that you're committed to, you now have a 95% chance of completing that goal. Pretty cool. So if that's you, and if you want to start the business, or you want to, turn this thing from side hustle into a full-time thing, or maybe you just are like, I want to see what's possible. I want to see what I can actually do. I don't know what my end goal is, but I know I want to become an online coach, online health, fitness, nutrition coach. I just don't really know how to take this next step or how to get it started. And you just lack the accountability. You keep procrastinating. Or you sit down to work on the business, but you do things that are way more in line with motion than action, right? You know what I mean? You're not putting anything out. You're not actually taking risks. You're just like writing content in your notes all day and you never actually publish it. Then I'll invite you to talk to us. In the show notes, you'll see a link where you can learn more about how we help online fitness coaches start, grow, scale their online coaching companies to impact more people, create more freedom for themselves, and ultimately do something that you're truly passionate about. So anyways, that's it for today's episode. I hope that you found some value in this, and go get to work. Stop procrastinating.